I picked up a couple of new pieces of hi-fi equipment. Well, I say new, both from the mid-80s, new to me. At the top we've got a Kenwood reverberation amplifier, and at the bottom we've got an Akai graphic equalizer cum spectrum analyzer. Now I'll be adding both of these into my hi-fi in a few minutes, but I'm going to split this video up into two parts. We'll have one part about the graphic equalizer, and then a few days later we'll follow up with the reverberation amplifier. So part one is all about this Akai EA-A7. Now this is from the mid-80s. It's in the silver colour, of course, I like, but they did do a black one as well. I managed to get this one quite cheap on eBay because it's all dented here on the top, but that won't be a problem to bash out if I decide to keep the device. And besides which, when you stack things up, you can't even see that part anyway. Now it's from the US, it runs on 120 volts, so I'm going to have to use a step-down converter. And by all accounts, it seems to be quite a rare model because I haven't really seen many of these for sale on eBay. But anyway, let's plug it in because it looks an awful lot more interesting when it's switched on than what it looks like at the moment. But before we get to that, there's just one thing I've got to mention quickly. I was trying out a new microphone for some of these scenes, and it sounds terrible. So if you hear any hiss on the audio, it's coming from the mic and not the equipment. Now there's one thing I like particularly about this equalizer, and that's the fact that the audio will come through it even when it's switched off, and that's very convenient because it means you don't have to always switch this device on every time you want to listen to some music. Anyway, let's just have a look at it in action for a moment. So that's the spectrum analyzer part in action, and very attractive it is too. But really, of course, the main feature for this thing is that it's supposed to be a graphic equalizer, so let's equalize some graphics. Press this button here which says curve on it, and that gets us into the graphic equalizer mode, and then we can move these little bits up and down and get the audio sounding exactly how we want. Now you don't have to adjust both channels at the same time. You can pick either the left or right channel and then adjust that one in isolation, perhaps to get the sound right for the acoustics of your room or perhaps for your hearing. Now if I press this curve reverse button, that's the opposite sound. You can hear there's quite a bit of difference there. So once you've got a few different sounds that you like, store them in these three memory positions here, perhaps for different kinds of music or different times of the day, and you can switch your equalizer on and off at the top there so you can hear the difference in the music with and without those equalizations. Now once you've got things adjusted, if you want to just reset it back to the middle, press the defeat button. That puts everything right down the middle again. This device also has a couple of tape inputs and outputs, and more inputs are always welcome on any old equipment. It means I can route a few more things into my system, whether it's a reel-to-reel or a mini disc or perhaps just a couple of tape machines. And with this being a digital device, it suffers from less problems than some of the older analog ones. For example, pressing these rubberized buttons up and down, you don't get any kind of crackles, whereas if you had some of those slider switches, they could have oxidized by now and add a bit of noise into your audio path. And of course, with it being digital, it means I can store three separate memories in here and jump between them quickly without having to readjust all my slider switches. So there you go, that's the Akai EA-A7. Now if I can find the space for this in my hi-fi rack, I'd definitely like to keep it in there. There's a couple of reasons. Of course, the spectrum analyzer attractive to look at, but really it's to do with the graphic equalizer and the presets that you can have on that. You see, on a normal stereo system, you get bass and treble, which will adjust both the left and right speakers identically. The left and right channels will sound the same. With this, you can adjust those independently of one another, which to most people wouldn't be something that they'd really necessarily want. However, for me, I tend to have a bit of a hearing problem in my right ear, and on occasion it goes quite muffled. But with this, I can have a preset so that the right channel is quite a bit brighter than the left. And then when I switch that on, it sounds the same to me on both sides. And then when the problem subsides a little bit, I could use one of the other presets and get the music sounding exactly how I want. And you can get it sounding how you want as well. You just adjust things up and down a little bit, and it always sounds better to me when it's switched on. And you can do a straight A/B comparison because this one's digital, so you can switch the equalizer on and off, and it always sounds better to me when it's switched on. So if it sounds better with it on, definitely want to keep that in my HiFi. Now, admittedly, this is an old device, very hard to get hold of, but people are still making graphic equalizers. They might not be popular anymore, but if you're putting together your own HiFi system, it might be something that's still worth thinking about, because you'll find that if you put one in your system, you won't want all those lines right across the middle. You'll soon start adjusting them up and down a little bit, and it'll sound better to you. So I'll put a link up in the video description to a couple that I found on eBay that are still being made, or new models that are being made. But yeah, graphic equalizers, who knew? They're not daft after all. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.